And we bring in one of my favorite guys to talk hoops with each week. Hall of Fame coach Gary Williams is with me now. Coach, let's start with the game that left a lot of people scratching their heads. Maryland's loss to Penn State. Just what exactly cost them that game?
Well, as a coach, that looks like a trap game, especially after losing to Purdue at home in a very close game. I'm sure Maryland felt they should have won the game. And then to play 2 days later at Penn State. You didn't know about Penn State. They were coming off a very tough loss, losing to Rutgers at Penn State. And so what Penn State did, they did a great job of getting ready to play. And I think that might have caught Maryland off guard a little bit. They thought maybe Penn State would be down from their loss. And Maryland had trouble. They struggled defensively the whole game, and that's not their game. They've been a very good defensive team all year. And they felt they had some shots that should have gone in. But, you know, that's usually the combination for an upset where you don't shoot the ball particularly well, and then the other team is really fired up, ready to play. And so give Penn State credit. They did a great job, and I'm sure Maryland looks back on that game as one they let get away.
And it was a rivalry showdown in Bloomington last night, Purdue and Indiana. The Boilermakers came out with the win, but with that loss for the Hoosiers, what does it mean for their chances to make the NCAA tournament?
Well, it certainly hurt them a little bit, but at the same time, I'm sure Indiana, Tom Crean, they know this. They have two great wins in the bank. They beat Kentucky and North Carolina. They're two of the best wins any team in the country has. And so even though it doesn't look good right now, if they can put a streak together, they can quickly get back into the mix for the NCAA tournament. Because the NCAA, one of the things they've stated in the past is that when you have great wins, it doesn't matter whether you get them in November or March, they're still great wins. And hopefully that is true for Indiana, because Indiana is the type of team that can play very well on given occasions. They haven't put it together. A lot of that is injuries where they've had different combinations, and injuries where you don't have time to prepare your team without the injured players. So it's been very tough on Indiana, but at the same time, their season is not over by any means.
Another overtime matchup in the Big Ten last night, Wisconsin taking on Nebraska. Wisconsin came out with the win, but should the Badgers be worried that Nebraska, a team that's second to last in the conference, was able to play it so close?
Well, I was fortunate. I coached in the Big East, the Big Ten, and the Atlantic Coast Conference, and the one thing the Big Ten has is great home court arenas. And, you know, that was true last night at Nebraska. Very tough place to play. The crowd looked great. They really tried to help Nebraska win that game. The thing with a team like Wisconsin, their style of play, they play great defense. They're probably as sound defensively as any team in the half-court area in the country. And they allowed Nebraska to hang around. And anytime you let a team hang around, there's a chance that bad things can happen at the end of the game, and they almost did. And I think that's the one thing Wisconsin's going to try to get out of that game, is the fact that they have to do a better job of when they get the opportunity to put a game away. You can't keep letting teams hang around. The odds are going to get you sooner or later.
And the games over the last few weeks in the Big Ten prove that nobody's position is set in stone. It's anybody's game once these teams step onto the court. How do you think this might play out in the Big Ten tournament?
Well, it should be wild. The Big Ten tournament's back here in Washington, D.C. this year. It's a great event, the Big Ten tournament, and to have it in the nation's capital hopefully makes that special. We guarantee the temperature will be 60 degrees for the tournament, all the days of the tournament. But really, it's a great chance for a lot of the Midwestern fans to get back here, take a look at the area, and, you know, see what the nation's capital has. And basketball-wise, certainly, with what's happened so far in the Big Ten this year, it's going to be a wild tournament. You're going to have teams that need wins if they want to make the NCAA tournament. So I'd hate to be playing one of those teams if I was in a different situation, if I was kind of guaranteed that I was in the NCAA. The team you don't want to play is that team that really needs the win to get there. And so it should be a great tournament. I hope everybody enjoys it, because I know the people here are really looking forward to it.
I'm sure a lot of people in the Midwest are going to enjoy that 60-degree temperature. That's like summer this time of year.
Well, that's not written in stone.
Let's move on. The committee is set to release the top 16 seeds tomorrow. What are your thoughts on the idea of releasing those rankings in the middle of the season?
Well, for the fans, I think it's good. They get into it and everything. But as you know, an old school basketball person, I don't like the idea. I love conference play. I think the games last night in the Big Ten were tremendous basketball games. And to put all the emphasis on the NCAA tournament all the time, we don't need that. Football needed that. I thought basketball didn't need that. If I'm in that top 16, great. Whether you finish as a 1 seed, 2 seed, those 2 seeds don't really matter. It starts to matter more after that in terms of the strength of a team you'll probably play. But if I'm not in there, I'm not too worried about it. If I think I'm good enough to make the NCAA tournament, I have to win games whether the seedings are released or not released. So my focus is to make sure the team doesn't get carried away, doesn't get happy if they are in, the top 16 teams, because you can get out of that just as quick as you get in it. So you have to be a little careful. But overall, just for me personally, I don't think it's necessary. I think the emphasis somehow, some way, should be back on conference play, not just in the Big Ten, but all conferences. They're some of the greatest games ever. A lot of times, those first couple rounds in the NCAA tournament are played in half-empty arenas. The excitement's not there. And other than being in the NCAA tournament, it's just not as good as a big-time regular season conference game.
And just to piggyback off of that, do you think as a coach that helps or hurts your team mentally?
Well, I think you use it the best way you can. If you think you should be in the top 16 and you're not, that's great motivation. If you're in there, you have to make sure your team understands that this is the not even the middle of February yet. That doesn't mean that you're definitely going to be in the tournament or you're going to have a particular seed. So it's all about winning this time of year. The teams that have gotten better, that are the best teams in their conference, this is the time you put the gas pedal down and really steamroll the rest of the teams in the conference. So the seedings are nice, but, in terms of your team, you can't let it affect your team either positively or negatively.
Always a pleasure, Coach. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jess. Appreciate it.